Think about those ancient sets of rules, the
Yeah.
ones that just seem to stick around through history. What makes them last?
Mm.
Is it like a sense of fairness,
Yeah.
or maybe the complexity, or just sheer power?
It's a great question. And today we're digging into one of the most famous ones.
The Code of Hammurabi.
Exactly. We're diving into this Babylonian legal text. It's from around 1755 to 1750 BC.
Okay.
And what makes it such a big deal is, well, its size and how complete it is. It's the longest, best organized, and frankly, best preserved legal text we have from the ancient Near East.
Wow.
All written in Old Babylonian Akkadian and attributed to King Hammurabi himself, first dynasty of Babylon.
And this wasn't just like written on papyrus or something fragile. This was meant to last, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're
Yeah.
talking carved in stone, a massive basalt stele standing 2.25 meters tall.
That's huge. Imagine walking up to that.
Right. And it wasn't always where it ended up. It started in Sippar, which is in modern Iraq, Mesopotamia.
Okay.
But then it went on a bit of a journey, taken as plunder about 600 years later, ended up in Susa, which is now Iran.
So it got looted.
Pretty much, yeah. War prize. Then nothing for centuries until, bam, 1901, rediscovered in Susa.
Incredible find.
Totally. And now, of course, it's in the Louvre Museum in Paris, a real icon of the ancient world.
And it's not just text, is it? There's imagery, too.
Yeah, that's right. At the very top, there's this relief carving. It shows Hammurabi standing before Shamash,
Shamash, the sun god.
the sun god, and crucially, the god of justice in Babylonian beliefs. So a very powerful image connecting the king to divine law.
Makes sense.
And then below that, you get the text. About 4,130 lines of cuneiform.
Wow.
But interestingly, it's not all laws. About a fifth of it is this grand prologue and epilogue, almost poetic.
Like bookends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the middle part, the other 4/5, that's what we usually call the laws themselves.
Okay, so our mission today, our deep dive, is to really unpack this thing, right? Figure out what it tells us and why it's still so significant.
That's the plan. Get into the important bits, understand the context, and see why we still talk about it.
All right, let's start with the man himself, Hammurabi. Who is this guy? What kind of king are we talking about?
Okay, Hammurabi, he was the 6th king of Babylon's first dynasty. Ruled quite a while, 1792 down to 1750 BC.
So, a long reign.
Yeah, and he was a major force. He really cemented Babylon's power over Mesopotamia. He used, well, everything. Military strength, definitely. Diplomacy, yes. But also, some pretty clever, maybe even ruthless political maneuvering.
How so?
Well, it seems like he sometimes waited for rivals to weaken, like Rimsin of Larsa, who was getting old when Hammurabi finally conquered Larsa. And he wasn't shy about turning on former allies. Eshnunna, Elam, Marani, he betrayed them to expand his own empire.
Okay, so a shrewd operator.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit treacherous. But the code itself, it talks about justice, right?
Yeah.
Preventing oppression.
It does, and that's the fascinating part. Despite this, aggressive expansionism, his letters suggest he actually did care about his subjects' welfare. He did a lot of building projects, too. And the prologue to the code makes a big point of this. It says the gods literally chose him to prevent the strong from oppressing the weak. So he's crafting this image of himself as a just ruler.
So was this totally revolutionary? Was he the first guy to think, hey, let's write down some laws?
No, not at all. That's really important context. Hammurabi's Code wasn't the first law collection in Mesopotamia, not by a long shot.
Oh.
We know about earlier ones. There's the Code of Urnamu, the Code of Lipit Ishtar, the Lies of Eshnunna. These were written even earlier in Sumerian and Akkadian.
Huh?
And they were also attributed to kings. So writing down laws seems to have been, well, a thing kings did in that region, a tradition.
So if there were earlier ones, why is Hammurabi's the famous one? Why does he get all the attention?
Well, mostly because it was the first major one found by archaeologists in modern times.
Discovery.
Yeah, and it was found in such good condition, relatively speaking. And it's just so monumental. That physical presence definitely helped cement its fame right from the start.
Okay, let's get back to that physical presence, the stele in the Louvre. What else can we say about it?
Well, like we said, 2.25 meters tall. The circumference is about 165 centimeters at the top, widening slightly to 190 at the base.
So it tapers a bit.
A little, yeah. And the relief carving, Hammurabi and Shamash, that's pretty big too, about 65 centimeters high, 60 centimeters wide.
Wow.
And when they found it, it was actually in 3 main pieces, but apparently it was quite straightforward to put back together.
And you mentioned it ended up in Susa, Iran? How did that happen again? Plunder?
That's the main theory, yeah. Proposed first by Shale, the guy who published it. The idea is an Elamite king, Shutruk Nakhunte, grabbed it probably around 600 years after it was made, took it back home as a trophy.
War trophy. Makes sense.
And there's even physical evidence suggesting he might have planned to alter it. Down near the bottom, 7 columns of the laws were actually polished smooth, erased. The thinking is maybe Shtriknahunte wanted to carve his own inscription there, claim it, you know? There's even speculation the beards on Hammurabi and Shamash in the relief might have been slightly recarved then.
Huh. Ancient editing.
Kinda, yeah. Or maybe it was just taken from Sippar, where Hammurabi was based later in his reign. But the Elamite plunder theory is pretty strong.
So these things were valuable symbols of power even back then.
Absolutely. But what's really cool is that loose steel isn't the only copy we have, not even close.
Oh, really?
Yeah, archaeologists have found pieces of over 50 other copies, tablets mostly, unearthed all across Mesopotamia, Babylon, Nineveh, Assur, other places.
50 copies.
Yeah. And some of these copies are much, much later, like 1,000 years after the original steel was carved.
1,000 years. That's incredible staying power for a text.
Yeah.
What's that to tell us?
It tells us it was hugely important, right? It seems like it became a standard text used in scribal schools to teach scribes how to read and write, and maybe about law and rhetoric, too.
So, like, required reading for ancient bureaucrats.
Kind of, yeah. And these extra copies are super useful for us today. They help fill in the gaps where the Louvre steel was damaged or erased. We can reconstruct almost the whole text because of them.
Okay, this is where it gets really juicy.
Yep.
When they rediscovered this main stele in 1901, what was the reaction? What did scholars think?
Oh, the reaction was huge, overwhelmingly positive initially. People were just blown away.
By what specifically?
By the perceived fairness, you know? The idea of a clear rule of law existing so early, it seemed to show this incredibly complex, organized Babylonian society.
Did they immediately start comparing it to other laws?
Instantly. The big comparison right away was with the law of Moses in the Bible.
Because of?
The eye for an eye principle,
Yeah.
lex talionis. Scholars saw that parallel, and it kicked off a massive debate about influence. Did this influence the Bible? Or vice versa? Or was it something else?
I bet that causes stir. What about dating? Did they get that right initially?
Actually, no. Early on, some scholars thought Hammurabi and the stele were much older, maybe even like 23rd century BC. Yeah. Later research, better dating methods, looking closely at the text itself, like the list of his achievements in the prologue, that all pushed the date much later, to the end of his reign, where we place it now.
So what were some of those early enthusiastic reactions? You said they were blown away.
Oh, yeah. Shale, the first publisher, called it a moral and political masterpiece. C.H.W. Johns said it was one of the most important monuments in the history of the human race. He talked about its humanitarian clauses and modernity of spirit.
I praise.
Definitely. John Ninley Prince said its discovery was the most important event in the history of Assyriology. Even someone like James Henry Breasted, who was maybe a bit more cautious, acknowledged the justice for the vulnerable, though he also pointed out some naive ideas from a modern view.
And wasn't there some theory connecting Hammurabi to a biblical figure?
Yeah, early on, people tried to link Hammurabi with Amraphel, mentioned in Genesis. That theory is totally discredited now, but it shows how much people were trying to fit it into existing frameworks.
So, a real game changer for understanding the ancient world. Okay, back to the stele. The relief, prologue, laws, epilogue. Let's break down that relief at the top again. Hammurabi and Shamash.
Right. So the standard view now is Hammurabi standing, respectfully, before a seated Shamash. Shamash has the horned crown, symbol of divinity, rays maybe coming from his shoulders.
But you said that wasn't the first interpretation.
No, interestingly, Shillett initially thought it was the other way around. Hammurabi seated, receiving the law from a standing Shamash, shows how interpretation can evolve.
So what else could be going on in that scene?
Well, scholar Martha Roth lists a few ideas. Maybe Hammurabi is presenting the laws to the god, or maybe he's receiving or even offering back these symbols, the rod and ring.
What do the rod and ring represent?
Often seen as symbols of kingship, authority, justice. Or another view connects them to measuring tools, like for building temples, symbolizing Hammurabi bringing order, measuring out justice.
Okay.
Whatever the exact action, the point is clear. Hammurabi's rule and his laws are sanctioned by the divine. It gives huge legitimacy.
That visual punch must have been powerful. Okay, onto the prologue. You said it's about a fifth of the text, poetic. What's it actually saying?
Right, the prologue and epilogue together are hefty chunks. The prologue, about 300 lines, is very formal, almost poetic. It uses this literary structure called ring composition, starts and ends with similar themes.
And the theme is?
Divine right to rule, basically. It tells a story. The top gods, Anum and Enlil, give ultimate power over humanity to Marduk, Babylon's main god. Marduk elevates Babylon. Then Anum and Enlil specifically choose Hammurabi to be king.
And why him? What's the justification given?
Explicitly to prevent the strong from oppressing the weak. That phrase again. It also says he rises like Shamash, the sun, over the black-headed people, a term for Mesopotamians bringing light and justice.
So setting himself up as the protector.
Exactly. And then for over 200 lines, he lists his achievements. First person, I did this, I restored that temple, I won this battle. He keeps calling himself Nadam, which means something like pious or devout, and he uses that metaphor of being a shepherd to his people.
Sounds like he's really building his resume there.
Definitely. It's a long list, which is one reason we think the code dates to late in his reign. After all that, he declares he's done what Marduk wanted, established Kiddamu Misharam, truth and justice for everyone.
Okay.
But interestingly, the prologue itself never actually says, and here are the laws. It just ends with Inumiyu at that time, and then boom, you're into the laws.
Got it. And then the epilogue mirrors this. Also poetic, but longer.
Yeah, the epilogue is even longer, around 500 lines. Still poetic, but this one does talk about the laws. It starts, these are the just decisions which Hammurabi has established.
Okay.
He praises his own laws, his own just rule. And then there's this key part where he hopes that any wronged man who has a lawsuit can come to the stele, have the laws read out loud.
So they can know their rights.
Exactly, that this will make them praise Hammurabi and bring blessings on the land.
So at least in theory, it was meant to be accessible.
That's the claim, yeah. He also blesses any future king who respects the stele and the laws. But then most of the epilogue shifts gears.
Me too.
Curses. Really intense, detailed curses against anyone who ignores the laws, damages the stele, or tries to erase Hammurabi's name.
Curses, like actual supernatural threats.
Oh yeah, big time. This goes on for 281 lines. He calls on pretty much every major god, Enum, Enlil, Enlil, Ea, Shamash, Sin, Adad, Ishtar, Nergal, you name it, and asks them to inflict horrible specific punishments.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay. He asks the moon god Sin to decree a life for the offender that is no better than death. Constant groaning and mourning. He wishes for their life force to spill like water. He asks the storm god Adad to bring famine by withholding rain and floods. He asks Ea, the wisdom god, to make them stupid and confused.
Wow. He wasn't messing around.
Not at all. The sheer length and graphic detail of these curses really show how seriously he took this monument and his legacy. It's like a giant do not touch sign backed by divine fury.
Definitely gets the point across. Okay, let's finally get to the main event. The laws themselves. Longest, best organized, best preserved. What's their structure like?
The core structure is what scholars call casuistic law, basically a whole series of if-then statements.
Additional clauses.
Exactly. If X happens, then Y is the consequence. We have this breakdown showing the range. It covers everything from like false accusations and property crimes to land disputes, business deals, marriage, family stuff, assault, rules for builders and doctors, farming issues, even boat rental rates and slaves.
Give us some examples. What kind of if-thens are we talking about?
Sure. Okay, administration of justice. If a man accuses another of murder but can't prove it, the accuser gets executed.
Harsh. Probably.
If someone breaks into a house, they're executed and basically hung up at the point of entry.
Grim. Any less grim ones?
Well, maybe. Land law. If a farmer is in debt, but a storm or flood ruins his crops that year, he doesn't have to pay his creditor back that year. Gets a break.
That actually sounds reasonable.
It can be commerce. If a traveling merchant gives goods to an agent to sell and the agent loses money, the agent only has to pay back the original capital, not cover the loss.
Okay. Family.
Adoption was covered. If you adopt a baby and raise it, the birth parents can't just come back later and demand the child back.
Interesting. What about assault, the famous one?
Right, lex talionis. If one Oweelam that's like a member of the free upper class blinds another Oweelam, then his own eye gets put out.
Eye for an eye, literally.
Literally. Professionals, if a builder builds a shoddy wall and it collapses, he has to rebuild it properly at his own cost.
Makes sense.
Agriculture. If your ox gores someone while just walking down the street, apparently no legal claim against the owner. It happens.
Oh.
And yeah, specific rental rates for boats are listed. And for slaves, if a slave denies their master and it's proven, the slave gets their ear cut off.
Ouch. It really does paint a picture of their society, warts and all. Okay, now the big debate.
Yeah.
Why? Why did Hammurabi commission this? What was his actual purpose?
Right. This is where modern scholarship gets really interesting, especially since about the mid-20th century. The oldest view, the sort of default assumption, was the legislation theory.
Meaning it was just laws, like
Yeah.
a modern law code.
Exactly. That it was meant to be a comprehensive set of rules actively enforced in courts, like the Code of Justinian or the Napoleonic Code, just much earlier.
What's the evidence for that view?
Well, the structure seems organized. It uses the word denotum, which seems to mean laws or judgments, and one ancient copy actually calls the text a imdat shurim, a royal decree. So some textual hints.
But you said there are problems with that theory,
Yeah.
big ones.
Yeah, really significant ones. First, it leaves out huge chunks of Babylonian life, like where are the rules for shepherds? They were vital. Second, some laws cover really weird, maybe improbable situations like threshing grain with goats. Were people really doing that often enough to need a law? Third, the format is only if dot then. No general commands like thou shalt not kill. And the biggest problem, we have tons of actual legal documents from the time contracts, court records, and they almost never mention the Code of Hammurabi or any code like it.
They don't cite it.
Nope. And worse, many of the judgments recorded in those documents actually contradict what the code says should happen in that situation.
Okay, that's a pretty big nail in the coffin for the simple legislation idea. So what's theory number 2?
The law report theory. This suggests maybe the code isn't legislation for the future, but a record of past decisions, kind of like case law summaries.
Abstracted examples of rulings.
Sort of. The if-then format could fit that. But again, problems. We don't have many clear links between code laws and specific known cases. And actual Babylonian court records usually go into way more detail about the specific facts of the case. They don't usually state abstract principles. Plus, those records rarely argue about points of law. They mostly just establish facts.
So, also not a perfect fit, which leads to the third idea, the one gaining ground.
Right, the jurisprudence theory. This one suggests the code wasn't primarily meant for direct enforcement or as case summaries, but more as a scholarly work, an abstract treatise about justice, about how judgments should be made.
Like a textbook for judges.
Yeah.
Or a philosophical statement.
Kind of both, maybe. Think of it like other Mesopotamian scholarly lists, lists of omens, lists of gods, king lists. They were organizing knowledge, creating paradigms. This theory sees the code as doing something similar for law. It's about the principles of justice, a model for legal reasoning.
How does that explain the problems with the other theories?
Well, it explains why actual court cases don't always match it. It wasn't necessarily a binding statute book. It also explains the weird or unlikely laws they might be there to complete a logical sequence or pattern following principles of Mesopotamian list science, like varying one element to create a new case. Opposition, pointillism.
List science.
Yeah, the way they constructed these long, systematic lists in many fields. And crucially, it fits perfectly with the fact that the code was copied in scribal schools for 1,000 years. It makes sense as a foundational text for education, teaching legal principles, and scribal craft.
That actually makes a lot of sense. It reframes the whole thing. So, okay, whatever its exact purpose, what underlying ideas about justice or society can we pull out of it?
Several key things jump out. We've hit lex talionis, eye for an eye, already. That's definitely there, especially between social equals.
Right.
Then there's the really clear social hierarchy. The law was not equal. Your class, Awalum, elite, Mushonim, commoner, Ornamentum, slave, massively affected the punishment or compensation. Maybe even your rank within those classes mattered.
So justice depended heavily on who you were and who the other person was.
Absolutely critical point. But on the other hand, there are hints of things we'd recognize. Like presumption of innocence, you get punished for false accusations if you can't prove them. There's a big emphasis on written evidence, especially for contracts. You needed proof. Generally, it seems to follow one crime, one punishment, and maybe some recognition of intent, though that's debated.
And the public display.
Suggests an ideal of accessibility, even if practical literacy was low. And finally, while the king's authority comes from the gods, the laws themselves are very secular, not much ritual or religious law in the main body.
Interesting. What about the language itself? Old Babylonian Akkadian. Anything tricky there?
The style is pretty regular, formulaic, which helps learners, but the script itself was a bit old-fashioned. Even then, signs and vertical boxes read right to left. The if-shuma, then structure is very consistent, using specific verb forms.
Any words that are still debated?
Oh yeah. Those social classes, Awolum and Mushonim, we're still not 100% sure exactly who they were, their precise status or origins. And legal terms like dinim or didim, law, judgment, case, and musharim, justice, equity, maybe a specific type of royal decree, getting the exact nuance is tough. Translation always involves interpretation.
So even reading it is complex. How does Hammurabi's Code relate to other law collections, ancient and maybe even later?
Well, within Mesopotamia, strong links to the earlier codes we mentioned. Similar divine justification, prologues, epilogues, similar types of cases, similar language. The one crime, one punishment idea seems like a shared legal tradition. Some argue Hammurabi might be harsher, more focused on punishment than earlier compensation-focused codes, but it's clearly part of that stream.
And outside Mesopotamia?
Well, the big one is the Mosaic law debate. The similarities in format, lex talionis, specific cases like the goring ox, they're undeniable. Direct borrowing, probably not, is the consensus now. More likely a shared Near Eastern legal background or tradition. But the spirit is often seen as different, more theological focus in the Hebrew Bible.
Any hints of influence further afield? Greece, Rome?
People have suggested links to the Greek GandM Code or the Roman 12 tables, but the connections are pretty tenuous for most Roman law. Tracing direct lines to modern law is really hard because the main potential path runs through Mosaic and Greco-Roman law, and those links are already debated. But you do see fascinating parallels, like maybe Law 238 about ship losses potentially relating to later maritime law concepts, like general average.
Faint echoes across time. How is the code seen outside academia by, regular people or other fields?
It's often treated, especially in legal history or political science, as if it was just straightforward legislation that was actively enforced. That legislation theory perspective is still quite common outside of seriology.
And it shows up in symbolic places.
Definitely. Hammurabi's portrait is carved in the U.S. Capitol building, along with other famous historical lawgivers. And you find replicas of the stele in big international places, the UN in New York, the Peace Palace in The Hague. It's become a global symbol of ancient law.
An icon. Lastly, what about specific areas like medicine and the broader political message?
The code is interesting because it does dip into regulating medical practice. Sets fees, rules for surgery, but also really harsh penalties for malpractice, especially if the patient was upper class. Shows medical responsibility was taken seriously.
Right.
And politically, it's a masterclass in using law to shore up social order and hierarchy. The different applications based on class aren't accidental. They reflect and reinforce the power structure of Babylonian society. The harshness was likely about maintaining control.
So, a tool of statecraft as much as justice.
You could certainly argue that. While we wouldn't use its specifics today, the very act of writing down laws, making them public, in theory, codifying responsibilities that represents a huge step, it laid groundwork for ideas about justice, fairness, accountability that, in vastly different forms, we still grapple with.
So, pulling it all together, the Code of Hammurabi. This incredible stone monument, packed with text.
Right.
It's our best window into that specific moment in Babylonian society, their ideas about justice, how law was developing.
Exactly. Whether as a code, a report, or jurisprudence, it's invaluable.
It shows this ancient society trying to establish order, define right and wrong, even if its purpose is still debated.
A powerful piece of human history, no doubt.
And that leads to our final thought for you, the listener. Given these different theories, legislation, law report, jurisprudence, what do you think Hammurabi was really trying to achieve with this massive public declaration? Was it about day-to-day ruling, recording the past, or shaping future understanding? And maybe more fundamentally, what does this nearly 4,000-year-old monument tell us about the relationship between law, power, and society itself, even today? Something to think about. We definitely encourage you to look up images of the stele and maybe even translations of the laws themselves.